Hello, people. I haven't been around for a little while. I did want to do a video with you or for you and talk about a subject that has nothing to do with my dogs, but has to do with um, the sea monster cancer. So, what I wanted to tell you is I'm pretty alarmed. I'm alarmed at how the healthcare industry is treating people with the sea. I don't, I believe in manifesting, and I do believe in healing and holistic healing, and I healed myself of my cancer. So my story is going to come in two parts. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm only going to go 10 minutes on. So right now I'm going to go 10 minutes and I'm going to stop. And then I'll do a part two. So part one is this. In 2022, I was using my vehicle and I was leaning on removing things from a Honda Element, and the two doors were called suicide doors. And I was on a hill, and what happened was the two doors slammed down while I was pulling something out of the car, and I hate to say it, it viced my breast, and I call that blunt force trauma. So I want to tell you how my cancer started and how it ended, because it's ended, I believe, to this day. 2021, I was moving from New York to Florida, and I was moving a bunch of things out of like the Honda Element, as I was talking about. And I was on a hill, and the thing that holds the door back broke somehow, and it hit me so hard that I fell to my knees. And I've tweaked my toes, I've broken a toe or two, I've never broken a limb, but this was so much pain that I can't even describe how much pain it was. It was so painful. So it was weird for like 2 to 3 weeks after the incident of the, I want to say blunt force trauma to that area. For 2 to 3 weeks, it hurt, but I looked for bruises or anything and it never bruised on the outside. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Why is it causing me pain? And then within 3 weeks after that, it turned into a tiny lump. Okay, a tiny lump, like so small. It was a grape size. Okay, so I ran right in. I got x-rays done. And what I say x-rays is I went to my primary and I got an order to go get a mammogram. And so I do want to talk about mammograms and sonograms as well. You have to follow your own path. At the time, I knew nothing about what was going on. So I just was scared. I didn't know what was going on. So I went and I had the mammograms done. And the day the mammogram was done, the radiologist kept running in and out, freaking out. Oh my gosh, freaking out. And she comes back in and she says, well, we need you to see an oncologist. And to be honest with you, I wasn't going to allow their energy and their freaking outness to bypass my God. My God is way bigger than they are. And I don't believe in Western medicine. I hadn't. And I didn't know what the tiny thing was. I thought it was a hematoma or a cyst. Could have been something, not dangerous. But so I went in and she was running back and forth and she showed the other radiologists and then they wanted more pictures. But that day, what we decided to do was let them finish up, get a diagnosis, send it back to my primary. And then I waited 2 weeks and I sat down with the primary and then they said, well, there's a suspicious lump in there and we'd like to take a further look at it. But right now, it's suspicious, but we're going to keep an eye on it and make sure it doesn't get any bigger. So I was going to keep an eye on it. And because of what I do, I'm a pet nanny. I was actually doing a job with a brand new puppy. And the brand new puppy and I were walking around and playing and doing something. And he ran for these stairs and he went to run down the stairs And I ran to chase him to stop him from going down the stairs because I didn't want to go fall down the stairs. So I stopped him, and I fell, and I injured it a second time. So I had wanted to make it clear that I do believe that breast tissue cannot take blunt force traumas to it. I'm telling you that. And the mammogram to me is a blunt force trauma. So I had horrible experience with the mammogram, very painful, um, very unhappy with how that went out. But they did just tell me keep an eye on it, and I thought, well, fine, let's just keep an eye on it. It's no biggie. So I fell on it during Christmas, and by January 1st of 2022, it just started to cause pain, and it started to grow, and it grew and grew, and at that point, I went and I got my first, I guess you want to call her, my first breast surgeon to take a look at it and to go a little bit further, because at that point it was growing and was causing me pain. And so I went back in and they did a biopsy. And the biopsy did not go well. I think it had to be every single technician that had never done it before. So that day I go in for the biopsy, and by that point, it was 3 weeks, maybe February, before I could get the biopsy done. And by then it was protruding out of the side. It had been growing so quickly. So it was protruding out of the side of the breast. And this is really a tough story, but I was belonging to a church, and I didn't want my church, as far as telling everybody, I just don't believe in putting the words out there, because unless it's a positive story, and it's not positive, I really didn't want to spread it. So I went to my church group every week, and I did go to prayer group, and I didn't tell my prayer group. I told one girl in the prayer group. I would keep it light. I would talk about other things, but I just knew that I couldn't take people coming to me and saying, "Oh my God, Sharon, be careful. Are you okay?" And I said, "Look, I don't know what's happening yet. I'm finding out." So, PX, in February of 2022, I found out that after the biopsy, um, my local um, specialist, actually, she was a breast surgeon and a specialist in oncology. She took a look at it, and she she saw the biopsy, and then she said, "Sharon, it's a cancer." And I said, "Well, to me, cancer is okay. The definition of cancer is a group of cells that are going rogue." So what does rogue mean? Rogue means the two cells are fighting within themselves. They're 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 multiplying, and they're making more cells that are not proper, and it need to be removed. So I said, to this doctor, "When do you think you take it out?" She said, um, 2 more months. So this thing grew in me another 2 months. So by March, April, almost by May, I had it removed. Um, I was really concerned, and I had given, power, of my health to a friend, close friend. And I said, if anything, they're going to check the lymph nodes. They asked me, "Is the breast important, to me?" And I said, "Of course it's important. I'd like to keep it." I'm like thinking it's just a lump. And I didn't want to think too far ahead, but it was HR positive, and the other part of it was a negative. But it was a low spreading, as far as the type of cancer it wasn't like stage 4 or anything like that. It was so new that it was maybe in a 1. So as numbers go, it was a really low level of, they weren't that concerned. So by April, I had gone in for the surgery. I gave permission for them to remove the breast if, in fact, um, all my lymph nodes came out positive. because I don't want another one to pop up there. Um, I don't really like Western medicine, but in this one case, because I was in so much extreme pain, they did offer me radiation. They said, Sharon, we can make it smaller. And I have to stop here and go part two for the next bit about radiation, about whether you should take radiation. I said no. I'd rather take the pain. So I had no painkillers and waited while it grew until I had it removed. And so part two is going to be about having it removed and then what happened from then, and how my mindset had everything to do with this. Emotionally had destroyed me so much that all this crazy hair fell out. My house had tumbleweeds all over it, meaning every day I would, and you know what? I wasn't even taking chemo. I was emotionally upset. I had so much trauma from the testing. Well, the mammograms were a nightmare. And then um, when they put the needle in the biopsy, they had to do it 3 times because they had a new technician in there that lost. They call it a target. It's like a little pellet that they put inside the tumor. They put it inside the tumor to make sure when they have the operation that they can target it and find exactly where they didn't need to do that because it was coming out the side. So I didn't understand why they were doing that. It didn't make sense to me, but she couldn't find it when she went back into the sonogram and looked around, and she lost it. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to go put you in the mammogram again and find it." And she did this to me like 3 times. And I already had a tumor that was a pear. It was as big as a pear. And I am not going to really call it a tumor. I think she misdiagnosed me. I believe that it was a hematoma, a bleed on the inside. So you have to be really careful with the doctors. Sometimes they get it right, but sometimes I think they can make a mistake. I do believe there was cells inside of the lump that were going rogue. But my history, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, about my medical history and how good it is, and how it didn't make any sense to me because I was such a low risk for cancer. So, part two, okay, I'm going to hang up now. Part two is my medical history, why this seems so weird. After the tumor was removed, and my therapies that I used to heal myself. And I say heal myself because I refuse chemotherapy. So I'm going to part two, and that's going to come next. And I am Nanny Sharon, and I'm a survivor, and I am doing great today. But I do have a part two for this. So let me just tell you part two coming up next.